Hi, everyone. My name's Anna, and I am 14. Recently, I've been betrayed. Oh, I don't mean that my boyfriend dumped me or anything. I mean, that'd probably be hard too, but this story is going to be about how my brothers just kicked me out of the house without even a twinge of guilt on their conscience. I guess I should start by telling my story from the fact that my mother was my dad's second wife, and he had 2 sons from his first marriage. So basically, I had 2 big stepbrothers, Derek and John. I always had an amazingly friendly relationship with them. They used to visit our dad at our house and would stay here for weeks, and my mom was very kind to them and always treated them like her closest relatives. Dad took us all on a vacation at least once a year, and everything was just great. Things didn't change much, even when my parents got divorced more than a year ago. I mean, for me, it was a little bit strange not having my dad living with us any longer, but we still saw each other pretty often, and even more, Dad would still gather all of us together during the summer holidays. During the rest of the year, my mom and I would talk to Derek and John over Skype. We would always share the latest news and stuff going on in our lives, so, as you might have guessed, I've always had a big and friendly family. Even though we had kind of an unusual way we were related to each other. But then the most awful day in my life happened. Our family doctor called in the morning and said that my dad was gone. It turns out that he had a brain aneurysm that he wasn't even aware of. And it suddenly ruptured and, well, Mom and I were his closest relatives, and we had to arrange the funeral and the dinner and, well, it's really hard to remember everything right now. I loved my dad, and it was just so unfair that I'd lost him. Of course, we immediately called Derek and John, who lived in Chicago, and they arrived on the first flight and helped us with everything. Even though Mom had me to help her, there was plenty of stuff to be done by 2 strong men, right? For example, we still had Dad's stuff in our garage, and my brothers could help us do something with it. So she invited them to spend a couple of days at her house. If only we knew what horrible people the 2 of them would show themselves to eventually be. You see, even though these guys didn't bother us much, it was strange that neither of them was in a hurry to get back to their life in Chicago. And one evening, during dinner, Derek asked the most unpredictable question I could ever think of. He wondered if they had the right to any of Dad's property. Can you believe it? It was only the 5th or 6th day since Dad was gone, and they were already thinking about inheritance. Even though Mom seemed to be far from happy with this conversation, she promised them that she would figure out the answer to that question. She said they would have to discuss it anyway. She just wasn't quite ready to do it so soon. But the next day, Mom contacted Dad's lawyer. It turned out that since Dad had no living parents and wasn't legally bound to any of his wives anymore, all his property was to be divided between his children, which meant the 3 of us. Derek, John, and I. There was nothing surprising about this, and everything was pretty fair, you might say, and you'd be right. Except for the fact that the house we were living in also belonged to Dad. Apparently, he hadn't had enough time to reissue it in Mom's name somehow after the divorce, even though, according to Mom's words, he promised to do so in my favor. And now, after his death, I only had the right to have 1/3 of it. The bigger part of my house, where I was born and grew up, now belonged to my stepbrothers. Since then, the atmosphere in the house and relationship between all of us completely changed, so to speak. Mom and Dad were definitely in shock, because the guys at any time could ask us to pay them money for their share, and we would have to sell the house. I knew that Mom was making a few attempts to consult various specialists about our case, but everything still was pretty unclear. Meanwhile, Derek and John seemed to be in a great mood and were too friendly whenever they would talk to me or Mom. At some point, I began suspecting that they were creating some sort of a plan or something. You see, a couple of times, I got them mysteriously whispering to each other. But when they noticed me, they would rapidly change the topic of their conversation to something totally neutral. This seemed strange to me, but as they say, innocent until proven guilty. Very soon, their behavior turned again and was totally inappropriate. They began literally acting like they were the only host in the house, showing off their superiority. From time to time, they would discuss some future repair work that needed to be done to make the dwelling more up to date, which was definitely offending me and my mom. And even after all of that, they were still acting like guests, because all of the cleaning, cooking, and grocery stuff was on us. One day, we, as usual, returned from the store. It was pretty late already, and we found total strangers in our house. Or to be more specific, there was a nice young couple sleeping in my mom's room. Of course, Mom got furious. She kicked the couple out of the house and demanded an explanation from Derek and John. Do you know what they said? It turned out that these nice guys were their friends who had no place to stay for the night. Although they said that it was their fault for not having followed up to check and see which rooms exactly were occupied, the whole situation was pretty outrageous and totally unacceptable. The next day, it turned out that a few of my mom's expensive accessories were gone, along with those unwelcome guests. But when she told Derek and John about what happened, they not only denied everything, but also got so offended that later on, we had to conditionally divide the house into common rooms, like the kitchen and living room and a private space, which for obvious reasons was twice as big for them as it was for Mom and I. This move, however, neither solved the problem of privacy nor improved family ties. Once, when it was the evening before one really important exam for me, and Mom had to get up really early the next day, my beloved brothers decided to throw a big party in the territory of common use. Neither my mom or I could sleep that night, and I ended up with a pretty low grade on my test. So then, they decided to treat us to a really subpar meal after that. And I had to go to the hospital with a severe allergy I had to the seafood. I know they were aware of it, but John tried to convince everybody that they weren't. After that happened, my mom decided that it'd be better for us to just move out than fall under the serious threat of taking part in that Cold War. For now, we've been huddling in a tiny apartment because all the money we've managed to save will go to pay off the lawyer. Yes, Mom intends to at least try to challenge the situation with the inheritance. And I am devastatingly disappointed, having experienced how people who were once so close to each other were able to be so mean to each other. I'd really appreciate any words of support from you down in the comments to this video, and please feel free to share my story with anyone you'd like.